Hey everyone, happy holidays. We are switching things up a little bit this week. I'm putting out a little bonus episode for you. This is me on the Own Your Work podcast with Sonia Holmes. For those listeners who maybe don't know me as well, I thought this could be a really fun way to learn a little bit more about me. Sonia did a really good job of getting me to talk about some different topics like meditation and finding fulfillment, and that time I quit my job and bought a one-way ticket to Thailand. So enjoy this interview. Be sure to check out Sonia's podcast. I'll link to it in the show notes. And have a great rest of the year. We'll be back in 2024. Wow. We'll be back in 2024 with a new episode. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. It's Sonia Holmes here, and you are listening to the Own Your Work podcast, where I bring you some inspiration and some actionable steps to help you create your best work life yet. Now, friends, I'm so excited about today's episode for a couple reasons, because guess what, y'all? We are doing the thing. We are doing interviews. And today I have a very, very special guest with us, Anthony Franzese. I was actually on his podcast recently. So we're doing kind of like a little swap, and I cannot wait for you to get to know Anthony. So, Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you. So, for the people, if you could just tell the listeners tell us a little bit about what you do. We're just going to dive on in.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Well, I live in New York City. I'm newly a father, as we discussed on my podcast. My
Yeah.
daughter's 12 weeks old now, my first kid. So it's really exciting. And I work in the benefits place, the employee health and well-being space. I work for a fertility company called Stork Club. So we offer fertility benefits to employees through their employer. And I
Yeah.
also host a podcast, which you were very gracious to be on, the Successful Working Parents podcast, where we talk about the intersection between work life, family life, and personal development.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more as well too. And first of all, like I want to, I know I've told you congratulations before, but like you've been doing this for a while now, 12 weeks, can't believe it. How does it
Thanks. Yeah.
feel? Like, have you, how does it feel? Like, have you learned anything surprising about yourself or even the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody told me, like, everybody really prepped me for like how insanely hard it was going to be, and
Yeah.
it is really hard. But I guess you just kind of like you find these extra gears for yourself. So I feel like I've been operating on less sleep than I'm used to,
Yeah.
and working and taking care of the kid when I can, and I feel like I'm just kind of pretty proud of just the extra gear I found. It's a lot though.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I was I saw one of your posts recently and you recorded an episode holding the baby. Oh, I was just like, oh, see, I love that right there. It's funny. I
Yeah.
had a guest on when I did my very first interview. I had a guest on, and my 2-year-old, she ran into the room and was like, "Mama, mama!" Like knocked on
Oh
the
my
door.
god,
And
that's
like I
great.
tried to hold her as well too while recording and stuff, and then she like pulls the mic to her and tries to sing her little, Paw Patrol songs and all the different
Okay.
things. So yeah, I
Yeah.
tried it, but I love seeing that and love seeing that moment. And so
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that.
No, I mean, it took a
Fun.
few extra recordings, a few extra tries, but it was a lot of fun to have her on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely worth it. So I want to dig into your career story and your career path a little bit. Like I'm
Yeah,
so interested about like just your career path. So would you mind telling us a little bit about your career journey and your path and how you found your path to where you are today?
sure. So my career path, well, it starts with going to college, and I went for a finance degree from Fordham University. I loved going to Fordham. I don't really know why
Hmm.
I chose finance, though, to be honest with you. I think because what 18-year-old really knows what they want to study, right? So I think we're given this like task of like deciding what you want to do with the rest of your life pretty early. And so I graduated with a finance degree. I was able to get a job on Wall Street after interning down there. And so I started my career there. And it was really what you probably think of when you think of Wall Street, like, the Wolf of Wall Street tropes. They still exist. It's certainly not the same. I think some of the guys I worked with were probably from that era and maybe still trying to live out those glory days. And it's just, some HR violations in there now. But, very fast paced, certainly fun at times, and also very stressful. And so
Mhm.
I was making a lot of money at a young age, for somebody who was, only 21, 22, 23 out of college. And I just had this feeling like I needed to get out. Like if I don't get out now, I'll
Yeah.
never get out. I work with a lot of older guys. So I kind of saw this other perspective of having multiple houses and the family and the cars and stuff like that. And just kind of not being able to do anything else. So after about 3.5 years, 4 years, I decided to just make the jump. And so I took a pay cut and I looked into this world of employee well-being, which
Mhm.
at the time I thought was pretty novel. I was always interested in trying to fit being healthy and taking care of yourself into a busy workday. And I thought, oh, that'd be like an interesting thing to help other people do. Turned out there was this
Yeah.
whole industry for it. And so I found this startup that was in the space. It was basically like a physical health and well-being company. So it was focused on getting employees to
Mhm.
be more active during the day. And I
Yeah.
kind of just talked my way into a sales role, even though I didn't necessarily have like the same sales skills. But
Mhm.
because they were just an earlier stage startup, and I think they just saw that I was passionate about it, I was able to get in there. And then, yeah, I mean, that was 10 years ago. And so I've then created a career in the corporate health space. I've been in the physical health space, the mental health space, and now the family health space.
Yeah, yeah. So a world of wellness. I think I'll probably call this episode From Wall Street to Wellness. I feel like that's the that's the title there, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, that could be the title of my memoir too, if I ever write one.
Yes. That's awesome. Now, you shared with me before that you also, quit as well too before, and then you moved to Thailand as well.
Yes.
So I'm just curious about that. And maybe I don't know
Yeah.
if you wanted me to share that, but I'm curious. I want to know more about it. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So, yeah, so when I left Wall Street, I wanted to find something that I found more fulfilling and
Mhm.
just was more passionate about, and that's what led me into the physical well-being company I work for. But even still, after doing that for about 3 years, I still just felt like there was something else missing, and just wasn't really satisfied with life, really. And
Mhm.
quarter life crisis, I think that's the term these days. And so I was single at the time. My lease in my apartment was up, and the company I was working for had just been acquired, and so we were transitioning into working for the new company. It just felt like a really good time
Yeah.
to like step away from everything. So
Mhm.
packed up a bag and moved my stuff to my mom's house, and some of it's still in the basement. So shout out to my mom for holding on to that couch.
Hey, mom.
Yeah, but yeah, I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand, and so I went to Thailand. I ended up backpacking around for about 3 months, and just really, my friends would joke and say it was like my eat, pray, love moment, but it was really just, not too much praying, but um, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and
Yeah.
that really led me to realizing that a lot of that stuff that you're looking for is really not from the external. And I think that was really
Mm.
the biggest realization was that it's not really about getting validation or getting this feeling of the purpose and drive from something outside of you. It's something that you can kind of create for yourself. And so
Yeah.
then I actually ended up coming back and was able to kind of like rebuild the same life I had. And so
Yeah.
I was able to get another job in a similar industry, like doing something similar. Like I really missed New York City, and I just was able to
Yeah.
do exactly what I was doing before, but with a really new perspective on life. And I think that made a big difference for me. I haven't moved back to Thailand since, so I guess it's
Yeah.
going well.
Yeah. I think that's awesome too. And I love what you did as far as you took time to just find yourself, look for answers within you. And it sounds like you just had a really great like awakening and experience as well too. What advice would you give to someone who is kind of like trying to figure it out and they kind of want to do something, maybe they want to take some time off, but they're afraid to take time off because, the question, it comes up all the time. I mean, I've taken some gaps, okay?
Yeah.
But like, who are afraid to take the time that they need in the space that they need to find themselves or do something for themselves or whatever that would be. What kind of advice would you give to someone who, you know, is considering it, but not sure how they transition back?
Yeah. Well, I would recommend reading The Alchemist. I don't know if you've ever read
Mhm.
that book, but it was
Yeah.
really okay. So definitely recommend this book, The Alchemist. It's a pretty quick read, and there was a part in the book about he's essentially a shepherd, and he has this. He's like presented with this quest that he like could choose to go on, this life quest, and he says
Mhm.
to himself, he rationalizes it as, "Look, I'm a shepherd. I'm good at being a shepherd, and I could always come back and be a shepherd. But like right now, I have to do this other thing." And that was
Yeah.
really all it took for me. Was like, okay, well, I could always come back and be a sales startup guy in New York City, right? Like that life will always be there.
Yeah.
And for now, I have to do this other thing. And so and it really how it played out. A year later, I was back doing that, and without really much, missing much of a step. And so that to me is the biggest piece of advice. Just like realizing that whatever you're afraid to step away from, you can always come back and do it. Certainly, if you're listening to this, depending on how old you are, the less you got going on, the better too, right? If you're already
Mhm.
own a house and you have a family, it's going to be a little more challenging than if you're in my shoes where you don't. But so definitely take that into
Yeah.
consideration too. It's probably only going to get harder the older you get.
Mhm.
Just that's the way life plays out. So regardless
Yeah.
of what your situation is, even if you do have a lot of those other things, you'll probably have more things later. So try to keep that in
Mhm.
mind. Like the best time to do it was probably yesterday, and the second best time is now. And you can always come back and do what you were doing before if you take the risk and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That reminds me of, even like me personally, taking breaks, career breaks as well too, to just focus on other things, focus on family, focus on, but always there's that fear in the back of, your head of like, can I get back into it? What if I miss it? What if I, my skills developing and, in that gap. But I've always found that when I did that, when I honored myself and, my values or what I needed to do at that time, what was right for me, when I came back, like I always felt like I was better, and I
Yeah.
showed up differently, and it was valuable, valuable time. So I appreciate you sharing that story with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as someone who's been in the wellness space, because it sounds like you really prioritize your wellness, not only just, for work and that's the industry that you're in, but you prioritize it. And I think you have some good habits and routines that you have. What can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you do to prioritize like your personal wellness and, your well-being?
Sure. And you and I talked about this before. So I used to have a much more elaborate self-care routine
Mhm.
before I became a dad. Um, so but the things that are really important to me are exercising. And so to
Mhm.
me that's like either weightlifting or running, or also I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So trying to do one of
Mhm.
those three things, or at least just taking a long walk if nothing else. And then meditation to me as well. So when I wake up in the morning, if I have in an ideal world, I'd have some time to read a little bit, work out a little bit, and then meditate a little bit. If I could get
Mhm.
all those three things in before I start the workday, like everything's really lined up for success. Now, with the kid, I probably try to do one or two of them, but I
Mhm.
still do. Right, you wake up a little bit earlier, and you do something when she's napping. So the meditation part for me, I think, is the most interesting because that is like a tool that when you practice it while you're meditating, but then you're able to use it during the day. So you're practicing
Mhm.
like a mindfulness meditation, and then you're able to apply it to whatever's coming at you during the day, right? So like, your boss is giving you a hard time, or
Mhm.
something's happening at home, and it just gives you like the chance to create a little bit of space between what happens and your reaction to it. And I think that
Mhm.
that's a really big key. I think exercise is also really important for your health, but it's like you don't really like apply your push-ups to
Yeah.
what you're doing later in the day, in the same way that I think meditation kind of applies to everything else you're doing.
Yeah. For beginners, right? Because I
Mhm.
know, I've tried it a couple times,
Yeah,
and I know even just with others as well too. There's this idea that it feels hard, or I can't get my mind to, like it's challenging. And
sure.
so do you have any advice for like a beginner who's just is trying to want to, start it a little bit and maybe practice it? What would be your best, like, easy get started, don't overthink it? What would be your best advice?
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this topic. So first of all, if you're listening to this and you've tried to meditate and you're like, it's not for me, I think too much, I have too many thoughts,
Hmm.
that's normal. And I think that the people's biggest block is that you're expecting to sit there and just like, and just like have thoughtlessness for
Yeah.
any amount of time, which is just not the case. If you're not thinking at all, you're dead, right? Or you're like
Hmm.
fully enlightened. So you want to have thoughts, or otherwise you're not
Hmm.
alive. So I think that going in with the right expectation which is really no expectation, right? Is step one. Don't expect to have a clear mind. Expect to have thoughts, because you're going to have them. What you're actually going to do is realize, holy crap, what's going on up here? Like, I'm thinking all the time. And so when you start to practice the meditation, what you're doing is you're changing your relationship to the thoughts. Okay. So you're starting to notice them, and you're not as pulled by them. Meditation essentially is like focusing on an anchor. And so every time you're distracted by a thought or a feeling, you bring your attention back to the anchor. So probably the anchor is your breath a lot of the time. So you're focusing on your breath, maybe for like 2 seconds, and then you're like thinking about, like, oh, like I have to feed the cat. And then as soon as you notice you're doing that, you bring your attention back to your breath. So you're not like, oh crap, I thought about the cat, like I failed, right? It's like you want that rep. It's kind of like it's like a little bicep curl for your brain, right? Every time you're thinking, having the thought, and then noticing it and bringing your attention back to your breath, that's like a little rep for the brain. So you want to have thoughts, so you have a chance to practice. Now, over time, you might have less thoughts, but more likely you'll just be less pulled by them, and your relationship to the thought changes, and you won't be like annoyed that you had the thought. You won't be as distracted by it, and you'll notice it's just a transitory thing. As far as what to actually do, I'm a big fan of the Headspace app. Shout out to Headspace. I used to work there. I believe it's still free to try for 10 days or so. I also like the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. But yeah, I think there's infinite number of tools out there and apps. So like, find the one whose voice you like and just whose style you like, but then really going in without an expectation is really important. And then just doing it for any amount of time to build the habit. I always say, like, 10 minutes is ideal. I mean, I like to try to do 20 minutes, but 10 minutes is ideal. But 3 minutes is better than 10, and 1 minute is better than 3, right? So it's just like exercise, right? It's better to jog around the block once than 0 times. So even if you can just do 1 minute a day to start, that's better than nothing. And find an app that you enjoy and you're happy with, and I think not having expectations about the goal or about the outcome are my big tips.
Yeah, I love that. It feels more doable and less stressful. And maybe sometimes when I connect with people who also have these challenges, it's like, we want to do it right.
Yeah.
But, just going into it. But I love your approach, like letting go of even the expectations with that, like go into it with no expectations. I was taking some notes as well, too. So I'm going to look into those apps, Headspace and Waking. I'm going to look into those apps as well, too. And I will put it in the show notes, friends, as well.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's all good advice. What do you feel like the biggest benefit has been for you with, like, just really being intentional about prioritizing your wellness, and how has that impacted the work that you do and how you show up at work?
Yeah. So I think that when you're just general prioritization of your well-being, which is, to me, is like exercise, diet, and sleep, I think that you're just able to you just feel better, right? You can just tell when you wake up and you just didn't sleep well, or you haven't exercised in a long time. And so I think just generally feeling better just helps you feel like the day is more manageable, right? You can really just tackle the day when you feel good, and it helps you perform better. I think that when you get into the habit of exercising and like setting workout goals, it's also easy to translate that into work goals and career goals and things like that, right? And I think that you're able to build up some confidence, build up some momentum in the things that you do in your personal life, and you can apply that to the way you approach your career. So I think that having well-being goals is a good way to reinforce your ability to have career goals. When it comes to the meditation part, the mindfulness, there's a huge benefit to this, because it helps you be more productive. I think it helps you, even though it like takes time out of your day, it gives you more time, because you become more efficient with your time. You become more aware of like what each moment, like how much a moment lasts and stuff like that. I know it sounds kind of trippy, but so you become more efficient with your time, and you're able to not be distracted as much, right? Because you're not being pulled as much by thoughts, and then you're also less reactionary. So it makes you a much better employee and colleague, because you can't control anything that happens to you, right? That's really the reality of life, right? You can't control what your spouse is going to say. You can't control what your boss is going to say, or what your people that report to you are going to do. the only thing that you can really control is your reaction to those things. And so meditation to me is like the secret superpower to gain control over that reaction. Because, and I'm a New Yorker. I'm come from a big, loud Italian family. I certainly can tend to shoot from the hip at times, and that's not good. Really, it's not just not that helpful of a trait, of a skill. But what is good is giving yourself the ability to create space between the thing that happens to you and your reaction to it, right? Even if it's a half a second, you're not pulled by your initial gut reaction, and then you're able to respond more mindfully, more thoughtfully, and just get you out of trouble a lot of the time.
Yeah, I love that. I've been trying to practice my power pause, I call it. It's been a lot, just things that's just going on in general. And, I've been like just even counting to 6 or 5, before I even respond, to just like collect my thoughts, to process it, and then just, okay, and that's really been helping me to kind of like reset and like just, be less reactionary as well too, as you mentioned. So
yeah. I mean, nobody likes a spicy response to an email more than I do, trust me. But it's like it's not good. Like whenever you get a Slack or a text or an email, definitely don't respond right away.
There's
no,
my last email.
Yeah, right. And we can think of all the ways you can just passive aggressively throw digs at them, but yeah, there's no good come of it. Give yourself a few seconds, even in minutes, if not hours, before you really respond to something. Unless obviously it is urgent, but I think that's really helpful. And just really think about what why am I responding in this way? Is this actually productive? And is the person on the other end gonna change? That's, I think, another helpful thing about meditation is it makes you more aware of like why you're doing stuff. And for me, a lot of like frustration comes from wanting to change things, change the way another person is, or kind of what they're doing. And you're just like, everybody wants to like say the thing that gets their boss to be like, oh yeah, you're right, never mind. But that's just, no one's like that, right? So I think that the sooner you can let go, of that desire and that outcome, the sooner you can stop responding looking for that desired outcome.
That's so good. Shots fired, y'all. Let go of the desire to be right all the time.
Seriously.
All right. And let me go get a Band-Aid. No. Awesome. Now, you have a podcast, as we already mentioned. I would love for you to just share with us like why you started your podcast as well, and about a little bit about your journey with that. I think that's so bold and brave, and I would love to know how you embarked on your journey and kind of like the why.
Yeah. So I mean, this is another thing that I've struggled with is just putting myself out there in different ways. And this is something that, I think you've done a great job with, and we talked about before, but I've always wanted to create some more content and help and just build out my personal brand. And so when I was building a family and becoming a father, I felt like that could be an interesting, area to focus on the brand building. And it was a good alignment because I was also working in the family health space. So it felt like it was a good alignment. And the reality is that I was really worried about doing it, and not that it was an excuse, but like having it be related to work was almost like a Trojan horse for my brain. And I was able to just like sneak it in there instead of just being like, oh, I'm going to be like a TikTok influencer. Right. It was like, okay, well, I'm doing this partially to build up my professional brand. So it's I work in sales. It's going to help me put content on LinkedIn and help me potentially, generate more activity and leads in business.
Yeah.
So that to me makes it a lot easier to do, because it's like one of the benefits is work. And so it's like, well, at the end of the day, I'm just doing it for work. So I don't have to like really worry about putting myself out there as much. So that's been something that helped me kind of overcome that initial just inertia to kind of get started. But what it's turned into is really something I've really enjoyed doing a lot. So every week we have on a different working parent, and we try to talk about not necessarily parenting, but really like what they've found to help them be successful in that balance between the two things, right? Some of the things that we're talking about today, and just, ways that you're able to thrive despite being a busy working parent. And it's been
Yeah.
really great to connect with people. I've met some really awesome people, like yourself, of course. And so it has been nice to be able to build out the personal brand and the professional brand at the same time.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like you found like a mindset hack in there right there. And I want to like repeat something that you said, but you found your Trojan horse
Yeah.
to be able to get to do the thing. And I love that. I feel like sometimes we need to do that.
Yeah.
Like we need to find our Trojan horse in order for us to get out of our own way to do certain things, and I love that. I actually wrote that down
Yeah. I
for
mean,
myself.
because the hardest part is usually just getting started, right? So whatever
Mm-hmm.
you need to do to like trick yourself or convince yourself and
Mm-hmm.
just start whatever it is, putting the pad to the paper, pin the pen to the pad, or start typing or
Yeah.
start publishing. Like, I think that it helps. And then once you have some momentum, then that reason doesn't really matter so much anymore, right? Because then you're just doing it. But I think that it does
Yeah.
help to give yourself a Trojan horse to trick yourself however you got to trick yourself, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to wrap it up with a question, right? And it's a little scenario. I want us to envision, right? We're at your 107th retirement party. Okay. You
Wow.
probably, hopefully, aren't retiring at 107, right? But,
Uh-huh.
anyways, I would love to know, what you would love to hear people say about Anthony. What are some of the things that you want people to say about you when they grab the mic and, give you your flowers?
Wow. That's a good question. And it's at 107 specifically. I wonder if my answer would change if it's at 94 or maybe like, well, he's freaking old, this guy. I don't know.
93. Okay,
Okay.
93.
I mean, I think that I try not to live this way too strictly, but
Mhm.
I hope that people think that I've tried, he kind of built a life that he wanted to build, right? And I think
Yeah.
that that's important to me. And I think, I think about like what my child would see and what my kids would see is just trying to do things on your own terms and but also do it, like, have fun doing it, because I think that
Yeah.
you can really stress over like, oh man, I gotta get this job or I have to like start this thing. And I think that at the end of the day, we're all just, on a rock hurtling through space.
Mhm.
And so I hope that whoever grabs the mic says that Anthony did what he could to live life in his terms, but he also knew that
Yeah.
we don't know why we're doing it anyway.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. That's so good. So fun. I
Yeah.
feel like we all need to have a little bit more fun, seriously, in
Yeah, we
everything that
do.
we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it's like, you could take everything seriously, and you should sometimes, and some things are
Mhm.
very, very heavy and very serious, but a lot of the times we don't know why they're happening, and we don't know why we're here, and I think we got to just enjoy it while we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay, I want to share this last thing, okay? So I was pouring some coffee the other day, and I actually did an episode on it, but it goes so in line with what you were just sharing. A thought came to me, and it was like, be less serious and more curious. And like, what if we
Mm,
just leaned into having more fun and just play a little bit more instead of like worried about breaking things, but just asking questions like, what if, right? And
yeah.
leaning into that and just, I mean, we're all trying to figure it out. What if we just figured it out like a kid, like be
Yeah.
childlike. And I think
Uh-huh.
that's so good in everything that you shared. And it just remind me of, the backpacking, the finding your way. I feel like you've been very bold in your choices, and I love that. And my hope for my audience is to, be bold and take control of their careers and really own their work and, make decisions for themselves. And I love that you are doing that. I love your story or your journey from Wall Street to wellness. And I think it's so inspirational. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom that you did today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on to share.
That's so good, friends. Oh, well, friends. All right, we're going to wrap this up, but you already know, friends. You already know what I'm going to say. Until next time, friends, remember, there. Wait, hold on. Anthony,
Yeah.
I forgot. I got to ask this question. Y'all bear with me, okay? I don't do too many interviews yet. How can the people find you?
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah.
Seriously, how did I do
Yeah.
that? Can the
Wow.
people find you?
Well, Yeah, they can find me. They can find me on LinkedIn, Anthony Franzese on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, work at Store Club, and yeah, check out the Successful Working Parents podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. Those would be the two best places.
Awesome. I will make sure it's in the show notes, friends. Okay.
All
Now, for
right,
real this time. For real this time. Until next time, friends, remember there's so much more to you than the work that you do. Own your work. Don't let work own you. Until next time, friends. Bye.
bye bye.
Okay. Now I have to figure out how to end it. There you go. 1 second.